Welcome to Chapter 13, where we're going to talk about power, influence, and politics. Chapter 13 is the third and final chapter on leadership and influence. So in Chapter 13, we're going to talk about, describe different kind of positional and personal power, right? So we'll talk about influence, right? We'll describe some factors in the politics in the office, too. So the nature of power. So leaders exert influence, right? That's what they do. They exert influence over individuals to achieve organizational goals. It doesn't have to be organizational goals, it could be personal goals, right? But anyway, so the words I really like there are exert influence. Well, to exert influence, you need power. So power is defined as the potential ability of a person or group to exercise control over another person, right? So we need power, and here's a listing of different types of power leaders have. These are not mutually exclusive. The more different types of power we have, the better. So let's jump right into it. So common forms of power is legitimate power. That's what we refer to as positional power. It comes from your job. It comes from your title. So you're the Duke of whatever, so you get to do Duke stuff. I don't know. You get to say who leases your land and grow stuff on it. You're the state trooper, and so when people pull you over, they have to act a certain way, and you have certain powers because of that. You're the judge in the courtroom that the state trooper brings people to. You clearly have power from your position, right? Those are certainly legitimate powers. If you're the boss, you have certain powers because you're the boss. You can affect people's compensation and their appraisals and how they're viewed by their colleagues and all of that too. So all that is seen as legitimate power, and it comes from your position inside an organization, even if it's a non-for-profit, part-time, parents after work are in the PTA program at their local school, right? Those officers have legitimate power because they've been elected as officers in this organization. With legitimate power sometimes comes reward power, right? With your job, you can reward people. You can give them personal public acclaim in front of their peers. You can give them bonuses. You can give them good jobs. You can give them good places to sit and so forth, right? Or coercive power, you can punish them. You can give them the bad jobs, the bad place to sit, no new computers, whatever, the bad assignments. You have to sit next in a cubicle with the smelly guy. I mean, I've seen all that happen. And so legitimate power and certainly reward and coercive are generally lumped in with positional power. It comes from your position, and all those things are sort of falling from that. And when you lose your position, you lose those powers, right? You lose the ability to reward. You don't have any reward power. You don't have the ability to coerce them and so forth, right? So positional power comes just from that. Now, I'm a college professor, right? So I have some positional power. I can have reward power, give people good grades. I can have coercive power. I can kick them out of class if they behave pretty poorly. If one student was acting badly toward another student, said derogatory things about them while they're presenting or something like that, I would toss them out of class. It's never happened because I warned the students against that ahead of time, because I use my legitimate power, right? I tell them I'm allowed to kick you out of class, and I will if you're not behaving when each other are presenting. So you have to be nice to each other. One of my rules in class. And same thing goes when we're doing our blogs and things like that, right? All right, so people in positional power often do things to remind us of their positional power. So for instance, I said state trooper. What does the state trooper have to remind you of his positional power? Think about it. If your parents get pulled over or you get pulled over by a state trooper, what reminds you they are in fact a state trooper? Almost always they step out of the car and they do what? They put on a Smokey the Bear hat, right? The broad-rimmed hat, right? That's only for state troopers. Well, park rangers, I guess. But if you're pulled over the highway, it's not the local guys, it's the state trooper who puts that hat on, right? They reserve that for themselves. So you know exactly you're talking to the state troopers. So it's been my experience, you're not getting out of the ticket, right? But I guess I've never been pulled over by a state trooper, but I've seen it happen a lot, and I've heard lots of stories. But anyway, the state trooper hauls you into the judge. What does the judge have to remind you of their positional power? Think about it. What do they have? What are they wearing? Where are they seated? Right? They're wearing a robe. Why are they wearing a robe? Because it's hot out or cold out? No, they are not, right? It's to remind you they are in fact the judge. What do they have in their hands? A gavel. They can bang that gavel, make a loud noise that gets everybody's attention right away, right? They have a desk, right? Actually, they call it a bench, right? Is it big or small? It is in fact big and is high up. So you have to look up to the judge. So they literally are in a position of power, right? Talk about positional power. They are in front of you, they were up above you, and they are behind this big usually wooden structure, right? So they literally have positional power over you. That is a very strong reminder. Remember, in court, sometimes people will be upset, they'll lose control of their emotions. It's life changing things are happening, and so sometimes the challenge to keep control of their emotions at all. So they have these things in place, so it readily reminds them, hey, that's the judge, you must listen to them. I mean, they can throw you in jail for contempt of court. There's bailiffs there that will that can tase you or arrest you, and all that kind of stuff can happen, right? So they repeatedly remind you of their positional power. How about at work? What does the boss have to remind you of their positional power? What would you think? Think about it for a little bit. What would a boss, an upper level manager, whoever have positional power? Right? Think about what you have. Think about what they have. Right? You might be in a cubicle, they might be in an office with a door. Or you might be a factory worker and they're in the little office, or even the cubicle. They have positional power. They're the shift supervisor. So they get a desk. You do not. You get a chair at a workbench. You're in an office, you're in a cubicle, they're in a real office. Maybe it has a door. Maybe it's not a cubicle, the walls go all the way up. If they're a little higher up, maybe they have a window. If they're even higher up, they'll have two windows, or even better, the valued corner office, so they can see two directions out of the building, right? Office space. How big is their desk? What's in their office? Is it cluttered with, is it used also as a storage closet? That means they're a low-ranking person, right? Is it nice and clean and it's got new furnishings and all of that? Then they're probably a high-ranking person. Is there somebody sitting outside the office like an administrative assistant? Well, they're expensive, right? So if they have one of those sitting outside, then that puts them even higher up on the food chain, as I like to say, on the org chart. So what are they wearing? Right? So if they're wearing a really nice suit, really nice clothes, expensive shoes, that kind of thing, if they carry a nice bag, a nice valise, a nice attaché case or whatever, right, then all that matters, right? That's to tell you their status. They didn't spend $1,200 on a suit because they had $1,200 that kept falling out of their pocket and they kept kicking it down the hallway at home. They wanted to send a message. I have power. I make money because I have power. And they do it not just because it makes them look good, although it might, but it's to remind people of their status at work. Right? And that's part of it. When you have power, you have to use power. When you don't use power, it tends to go away. So if you come in dressing like the guy who takes out the garbage, right, you're going to have a hard time getting the same respect as the person wearing the expensive suit with the expensive clothes and the expensive bag and so forth, right? Where they're just going to know you're the boss. I remember when I was an intern, I focused more on results than following the processes, and I was being I was in my boss's office, and I broke one of the purchasing rules, and head of purchasing came down to talk to my boss about it, and it ends up with a chewing out of yours truly. And I'm sitting there as an internship, and they're just letting me have it about I'm breaking the rules and I got to follow the rules and all that. They thought I did it on purpose when in fact it was just ignorance on my part. There wasn't anybody to ask, so I just did it. And I went out and bought stuff from a hardware store. I thought they had petty cash, as opposed to it was a defense contractor, and I needed to take it to purchasing so they could get 3 quotes, because that was the rule. The government made them get 3 quotes on everything they bought. But I just needed a couple bolts and screws, so I just went to the hardware store and bought them. Like when I worked at the gas station, that's how it worked. And we took money out of a cigar box as petty cash. Turns out corporate America and large defense contractors do not work that way. There's a bunch of paperwork involved. So I took my chewing out like I deserved, I suppose, and I was sitting there. I remember looking at the guy thinking I could see his shoes and the bottom of his pants leg, so I must have really been staring at the ground. And I remember thinking that his clothes and shoes combined cost more than the car I drove to work in that day. So people like to do that. They like to remind you of their power. By the way, to finish that little story, so they send me out of the office and they finish their conversation. My engineering manager and the head of purchasing, and so after he leaves and the smoke clears, I wait about an hour. I wait like half an hour before quitting time, and I kind of mosey back into my boss's office. This guy wasn't much of a leader, by the way. I don't know, I just didn't like him. But anyway, so I mean, he should have come see me, right? Here I am, an intern. I got chewed out by the head of purchasing. You think he'd come talk to me after that? No, I have to go see him. So I kind of go in there with my tail between my legs and come in there kind of quiet and sheepish. And I said, so How did it end up? And he goes, well, it's okay. He's mad at you, but he understands it was a rookie mistake, and you need to remember two things. What's that? Well, one, the job got done. You got those bolts, you put it in our product, it shipped on time, and that's always a good thing. Okay, thanks. And two, don't do that again. The guy was really mad. I go, yeah, that I got, right? Because I was kind of wondering if I was going to be fired or whatever. And he said, no, here's the lesson. The takeaway there is, that's why I'm telling the story, is not just the guy was well dressed, but the takeaway there is I broke a rule, and I did it. One, I did it accidentally, but two, I did it to help the customer. We needed this hardware. We did not have this hardware, so I'm a problem solver. I went out and bought it. Right? I even told him, I told the head of purchasing, hey, look, if it's $6 for the bolts, I'll just eat it, right? If it's that big a deal, don't reimburse me. I don't care. That made him even madder. Because it made him look like he was powerless to reimburse me, poor little broke college kid. That did not make things better. I thought it would, but no, it in fact made him really mad. Although, I still think I had the right idea, and not that they should have let me eat the cost, but I was just trying to help. And it turns out that's what my boss told me. That's what basically saved me, was that the company needed this to be done. It was done. I didn't follow the rules. This guy was mad because it impacts on his job. His job to enforce these government rules that they get all these contracts. So he was more mad that it made him look bad than anything else. And theoretically, the government could have complained about it. He would have gotten in trouble, and he would have been embarrassed to explain what happened and that I was out of control and whatever. I'm sure they would have been happy to blame it on me and sent me off back to college. But the point is, when you do something, when the rules get in the way and you're going to break the rules, you have to know what the consequences are. You certainly don't want to risk anybody's health, safety, those type things. But sometimes little rules, what I call little processes that you're supposed to follow, get in the way. And I've always been a believer in you ask for forgiveness rather than permission. So you bend the rules, as I say, and then get the job done, take care of the customer, and then the rest will take care of itself. If you break the rules because you were lazy and didn't feel like filling out the paperwork, that's a different category. You have to take whatever consequences come. But if you break the rules because they got in the way of helping the customer, then hopefully somebody will step in and protect you because you're doing the right thing. And by helping the customers, you help the organization. So, or the other way around, you help the organization, then you help the customers. All right, so that's my look at positional power, right? We have legitimate power, reward power, and coercive power. Now we're going to switch to talking about personal power in the next video.